Mangoose. 28 now. You're waiting. You're making 28.
No, we're live. We're live. We're live right now. They can hear you.
Oh, hello.
They can hear your verbal abuse.
I've been telling Mangoose for the last minute and 45 seconds that he needs to start the stream because you are all waiting for him. And he refused.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to For the Minions, the weekly show where we talk about Predecessor, Overprime, and Ethereal. And as it was mentioned in chat, hopefully this will be the last one where we don't have just a steady, constant one to play. Looking forward to that. Unfortunately, the Viking Jedi could not be with us this week. He had to go buy himself a merkin to match his new hair color up top. I don't know if you guys know what a merkin is. It is a pubic wig often used in Hollywood. So, I am your host, the Mangoose. Joining me, as always, is my friend and co-host, Jelly Knees. How you doing, Jelly?
Well, I think I'm glad that I just got my asshole bleached when I was gone at this point. Oh my goodness. I am fantastic, Mangoose. I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to say it too, that yeah, this is the last week we won't have. I mean, we had faults before, right? So technically this is the last week again before we have a game to consistently play, but it is an exciting time for the para-refugee community for sure.
And joining us this time, we have Amedkit, who I've done a couple videos with. He's our predecessor guy this time. I wanted to get somebody with that was pred positive on the show, and we got Amedkit. And oddly enough, with these crunch highlight videos, some of the stuff that we talk about in our show kind of made it into the game, which I think is really cool. So Amedkit, how you doing, man?
I'm doing. I'm doing.
Are you still cracking up over merkins?
Dude, that cracked me up. Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Amedkit. I make pred videos. And Mangoose, thank you for having me here. It's always an honor.
Yeah, good times, man. Good times. Been fun working with you. We're going to start off with pred. We got a lot of stuff to talk about with pred. Then we'll move into Ethereal, and then we'll top it off with Overprime, which this is going to be a long show, I think, because I mean, Overprime's final beta test is done, and we really haven't discussed what we liked and disliked about that. So it's going to go for a while. Guys, it's going to go for a while, but let's, for now, move into Predecessor. So let me pull up the sheet here. So Predecessor, they released the frequently asked questions in their Discord, which answers quite a bit. They also did a crunch highlights video, and Jelly has prepared us a little video as well. So let's talk about the frequently asked. Well, no, first let's talk about the crunch highlights video. I want to talk about that. Medkit, what do you think about this crunch highlights video?
I kind of so we talked about crunch a while ago. Unfortunately, that footage never came onto YouTube just because it got corrupted. But me, and JPie talked about crunch, and I said that crunch could easily be in pred if they took one of his passives, right, and move it over to the passive slot, and he's pretty much ready to go. And the video, at least for crunch, like I loved it. I mean, everything looks smooth. I like they got the jetpacks going. I noticed the items he's using too.
Yeah, and if you could
overall,
you could pause the video at certain spots and like see all of his abilities and his passive and everything. So everything seems to be pretty much the same, except now he has a heal on every third, either basic attack or ability used. And he has baked in Stinger Boost, which I find interesting because we discussed that when we were recording for Crunch. We were coming up with different passives, and that's the passive that I came up with for Crunch, was to give him a Stinger Boost just in his kit. Yeah.
You repeated that like 3 times, and I was distracted because my cat was like meowing nonstop.
So if you guys don't know what Stinger Boost did, that was an item in Paragon. After you cast an ability, your next basic attack would be empowered. It did have like a cooldown on it. You couldn't do it like repeatedly, but you could do it pretty damned often, and that seems to be just part of Rux's or Crunch's kit now. Jelly, what did you think about the video?
I thought it was really good. I think some of it is a little cluttered. Watching this crunch video, I think the fights he gets into, sometimes it's really hard to see. For instance, when he's fighting Chimera in the river, there are certain things he does, you can't see Chimera at all anymore. And so it's like, that's a little iffy to me. Like, I feel like, and Chimera, it's not so difficult. What is he going to do? He's going to basic attack me. I don't really need to see him that well to know that that's what's going to happen with Chimera, right? But other characters, if there's some kind of important wind up or something like that, I can miss that because I can't see the character at all, and that concerns me a little bit. But otherwise, he looks really fun. Like you guys were saying, they took his one passive off of his ultimate and stuck it as his actual passive, and then we're like, you know what? Give him more passives on top of it. Let's just make this guy absolutely insane to play against. He looks really fun. He's Crunch, right? It's one of those characters that had a cult following. Mangoose, I know you were a big Crunch player. And I think Fault's version of Crunch, which is very similar to what we've seen this version of Crunch be, kind of got me into the idea of playing Crunch, because I was never a real big Crunch player back in Paragon, but Fault kind of got me onto Crunch a little bit there, and so now I'm excited to play him in Pred when he comes out.
Medkit, did this get you excited to play Crunch? This Crunch highlights video?
Fuck yeah! I was throwing I was so surprised because I had money down for Huntress being the 20th hero. Right, Decker was the 19th, and we know who the 18 are. So Crunch being announced was just like, whoa, wait a minute. Like nobody expected that. I thought it was gonna be Huntress, but Crunch, like I haven't played Crunch that much, like back in OG Paragon, but I can't wait to try him.
And another thing you might notice from the footage, and I'm going to pretend like I noticed this from the footage and not from playing the video game, but his forward Crunch has a stun on it. Just his base forward Crunch without having it empowered or anything. I think that's going to make a huge difference in Crunch's gameplay, because it used to be, if you wanted a stun, you had to load up your right Crunch. You had to use your abilities in succession in order to get your right Crunch to be empowered. Whether that be you just forward Crunch in, right Crunch, re-Crunch, whatever. But now, just even off the rip, before you even have your ultimate unlocked, you can charge into somebody and stun them, which adds quite a bit to Crunch's kit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah,
and it creates a lot of opportunity for his team as well. Like it makes like a jungle Crunch something that's really viable as well, because coming out of those fog walls, if he uses his dash to get that stun off, then he's able to set up a gank really well for his team and create a lot of opportunity and space for them.
There was one concern I had for Crunch being in the predecessor space is because of everybody has a blink, right? You know how he has 2 dashes and he has to commit his ultimate in order to get that second dash? But if you have a blink on top of that, that's 3. And then I don't know if there's any interesting Crunch players that will put like a crest that also has a blink in it. That's like 4 dashes. I don't know. But we talked. I thought that was a concern, but at the same time, now that I think about it more and more, the blink is on a 5-minute cooldown. If the Crunch really wants to commit a hard engage like that or a hard disengage, so be it. And we don't know the cooldowns for like his ultimate or anything like that. But all in all, like that was the only concern I had with Crunch. But other than that, I think he could fit in Predecessor really well among the current roster that we have right now. I think he'll be fine, and I think Crunch has a really big fan base. I imagine.
Oh yeah.
One thing out of this video that I realized in this video, and then went back to the Kalari one to see if it was the same, and it is the health bars being on your crosshair is a weird choice. Your own health bar. So like Crunch's health bar is slightly above the crosshair because of how tall he is, but Kalari's was right on the crosshair a lot of the time as well. I feel like that needs to be placed off to the side somewhere, because the crosshair is one area you want as clutterless as possible. Right? You want to be able to know I'm aiming at this thing, and having your health bar there just obscures that line a little too much for me. I would love to see them place it off to the side of the character a little bit, like we saw with Fault, like we saw with Overprime as well. That these health bars are just more off to the side, so you don't have that clutter right in the center of your screen.
It'd be nice if they gave you the option to like move it around or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We've all talked about with UIs, more customization the better, because everybody wants their stuff set up in a different way. But I think he looked good. The animations, like that's been the hallmark of Predecessor, for me at least, has been the smoothness of gameplay and the smoothness of all the animations. Like they make the game look incredibly good. I think there's something to be said for Overprime's just kind of over the top, crazy spectacle of visuals, but
Yeah.
just base looking good. I think Predecessor takes that. I mean, that's my subjective opinion, but still.
No, if
I
you don't
agree.
agree with Mangoose, you're wrong. Get out of here.
Pred's number, like, you know, they're all perfectionists, right? They want that polish, they want that fidelity in there, and I think we all can see that in just this Crunch trailer alone.
Yeah, it looks really, really good. Is that all you guys had for Crunch, or do you want to move on to these frequently asked questions?
We can move on for me.
Right.
I'm good. Let's go.
So with the frequently asked questions, this is something that people, different companies often put into their Discords or what have you, but I find that most people just don't read them. They come into Discord and ask questions. I think here's my thing. I don't know if I've already brought this up or not. I think there should be a 3-question rule for all Discords. Any Discord you enter, you're allowed to ask 3 questions and 3 questions only. After that, you're cut off. That'll force people to actually try and find some of this fucking information themselves.
Wait, I got it. Okay, Mangoose, I'm ready. I'm going to apply your rules right here on FTM live.
Okay,
Ready?
okay.
Console win. Console win. Console win.
Console
There you
win.
go. Done.
But yes, they
Figured it
did do a frequently asked questions, which is very helpful. However, I had 2 different people, both pretty hardcore Pred fans, immediately messaged me when this frequently asked questions came out and said that I should do a drinking game where I drink every time the answer is not yet, but soon. Like, like 2 different people messaged me this, and I told them both I would be way too drunk by the end of reading through the frequently asked questions.
You get 5 questions in and be drunk.
I know, right? But we are going to talk about some of these. I cherry-picked a few of them. You guys cherry-picked a few of them. First one, what servers will there be for early access? Will additional servers be added at a later date? So the servers for early access, this is very important to a lot of people. You got NA West, NA East, Europe, and Asia. So I know there's going to be a lot of people begging for South American servers, and hopefully they'll get those in soon. But that there you go. NA West, NA East, Europe, and Asia. And if at any time, I'm just going to go through these. If at any time you guys have something you want to say about them, just let me know.
Console win.
Shut up. Is there any difference between buying Predecessor on Epic versus Steam? We do know that you can buy it on Epic and you can buy it on Steam. There is no difference content or price-wise. The main difference between the 2 platforms is that Steam bundles allow dynamic pricing. What that means is, for those who don't know, you can buy the base bundle and then you don't have to, you just spend the difference to upgrade to another bundle. You don't have to buy, whereas with Epic Games, whatever bundle you buy, if you want to upgrade it, you're going to have to buy a brand new bundle. So that's the only real difference there.
And as we've seen with Epic Games from our favorite game of Paragon, they don't put too much effort in. They just do what's easy. And if it doesn't work, they stop doing it there. And that's why dynamic pricing is not in the Epic Games store.
Right, on a smart fridge. I did see somebody ask if it could be played on the Steam Deck. That was in the FAQ.
Yeah.
How will crossplay impact competitive play? If matchmaking works as intended, players should be matched based on their skill level, independent of their platform or input type. So we should. So that said, we will be monitoring the performance of keyboard and mouse players against those of gamepad players during the first few months of early access and reevaluate if needed. And I think that's something very important to bring up that we've already talked about a little bit. But Pred early access will come with controller support. That was a huge deal for Overprime. That was one of the things that puts Pred a little bit over Overprime is the controller support. I was very surprised that Overprime didn't have controller support, but Pred will have it. I know that is a far more important thing to people than I had ever thought. Like I've been on keyboard and mouse for so long that I just didn't even think about it. But yes, people love having controller support, and yeah, they're just not gonna. If you're good with a controller, then you're going to be matched with people that are good to get with a mouse and keyboard. It doesn't matter what you're using. It just matters how skilled you are with said thing. I don't know. There's a lot of people out there with controllers that are way better than me using a mouse and keyboard.
I think the issue that they're going to have to face at some point with competitive crossplay is aim assist, right? You're going to reach a point in skill level where aim assist is going to make a bigger difference than not. And whether that's at lower skill level or higher skill level will depend on what kind of aim assist they're implying here. But that is definitely something that people at any level, but especially in certain areas, are going to complain about, is why am I going against people that have some kind of aim assist to hit their shots when I don't?
It kind of ruined Blood Hunt.
Yep.
Because the aim assist was just through the roof for controllers, where you didn't even need to really aim. You had to aim somewhere near somebody to hit them in the head.
Yep, and you see complaints about it in every single year with the new Call of Duty. The second Call of Duty comes out, they go like, aim assist players, and just freak out. So it's definitely something that they're going to have to figure out a way to navigate and get their community around.
Yeah, and I'm sure they'll deal with that as it comes around.
Yeah.
Here's a question we kind of discussed a little bit already. Is Huntress going to be among the first 5 heroes to be released in the early access? Yes, she will be joining the battlefield early next year, but you'll have to, next year being, not far away. But you'll have to wait a little longer for more information. For now, though, know that the one she hunts will be arriving this year. So it seems that we'll be getting both Huntress and Countess within these next 5 heroes.
Yep.
I think we're getting Countess first.
By saying this year, that means in December. Like, we don't have this year left. And if they're saying a hero a month, that means we're getting Countess in December. So.
Yeah, it seems like it, yeah. They gave a lot more away with that question or with that answer than they probably intended to. Very nice. So
Countess,
that's pretty cool.
Confirmed.
And as people have said in the chat, Huntress did not look like the bit that we've seen of her. She did not look ready for the game, so
no, they
have plenty of time though to get her ready. I'm excited to play her, see what she's all about.
We could use a 4th ADC.
Yeah, absolutely. The 3 ADCs is going to be rough for a little while,
especially 3 ADCs that aren't really much different from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like Yin was like way different than any other ADC.
Yep.
Grim was kind of different.
If you reference Paragon the Overprime, you've got the 3 out of the box ADCs in Twin Blast, Murdoch, and Sparrow, and then you've got the 2 variant ADCs in Revenant and Wraith if you're going to play Wraith ADC, right? Which gives a little bit more of that variety and counts 5 ADCs comparatively to the 3. And we saw in Fault having those few ADCs really kind of hindered a lot of that dual lane gameplay because it was just the same thing every single time.
Yep. Okay, so past the first 25 we are receiving through the bundle. Are additional heroes going to be accessed through progression or in-game currency? Answer was future heroes will be purchasable via in-game currency earned by playing the game. In the future, a small selection will be unlocked through progression as part of onboarding. So I like that. The unlocking them through progression and onboarding, like as you're doing the tutorials, you unlock a hero. I've always enjoyed that sort of system. The whole purchasable via in-game currency, they've got to put a store in before that's going to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you do get all the heroes if you buy into Predecessor, you're buying all of the heroes no matter what package you got. So this is going to be a worry for a little bit, I think.
You have all the heroes for the first 5. You don't have all the heroes forever.
Indefinitely, right? Yeah, my bad. You get the first 25.
Correct. Yeah. And that to me also implies a timeline for their shop, because at bare minimum, like you said, in order to buy it with in-game currency, I have to be able to buy it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that means that within basically 6 months and the 6th character being released, the shop would have to be
There will be a store at some point.
Yeah, of some kind. We'll have to have some kind of shop.
Are we going to get new item icons? The current ones feel unfitting with Predecessor's artistic direction. Yes, we are planning to update our item icons, but currently focus our resources elsewhere. If you guys didn't know, the item icons that we've seen in every beta test so far are free assets from Epic. Like, that's not even their own art in any way, shape, or form. And it's kind of a bit of a bummer for me. I want to see what I think they do have very exciting item design as far as gameplay wise, but the actual items themselves are very boring and basic.
Like
I am going to be a broken record about this until they get implemented, because this is my irrational peeve about Predecessor. and not, I wouldn't say fully irrational, but I hate that they don't have their own item art in the game yet. They've had tests for the last 2 years and have never put any kind of artist onto item art, right? Go on Fiverr and hire an artist, for God's sake. Like, do something more than get free assets from Epic. That to me is the low, like, this, you could do a minimal amount of work in this and still come out with something that's yours, rather than using the free assets that I've seen in a dozen other games in the last year.
Yeah. And they're not saying that they're not free assets, but they are definitely assets that I've seen.
They definitely assets.
Dozens of other games. Yeah.
Yeah. And this to me is that, like, it's, to me, this is a almost concerning aspect of Predecessor, because their answer makes me more worried. It's not, yes, we're planning on updating our item icons in the future, right? Which would have been a better answer. But adding but currently are focusing our resources elsewhere. Is this not important to you? Is having your own proprietary stuff not important to you? Why do you have your resources focused elsewhere? Why aren't you hiring an artist to draw these items for you, or to create these items for you? Right? When we look at these other games, even Fault had placeholder icons for their items when they came out, instead of using generic Epic assets. Mm-hmm. Right, and then got their item art put in. Overprime has all complete item art. Ethereal has all complete item art. Why are we using basic item art from the Epic store instead of hiring an artist to do this? You're $22 million, and these games with no funding or community funding have completely ready item art out of the box. That drives me nuts.
Getting a lot of questions coming in chat. How many items do they have so far, and are there items that don't support items that don't require healing or shielding to be effective and stuff like that? I cannot answer that without breaking NDA, but so we just kind of got to go back to the last beta test, those answers. I know, but we don't know. Okay, so you'll find out pretty soon, I guess. I wish they would just put them on their item shop on the website. That would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
So the item icons, I would imagine it's more important if the devs like focus on the actual actives and passives and how it affects gameplay. I think that's what they meant by resource first, because at the end of the day, those are just placeholder images. They can literally just it won't even be like a week's effort. I think they're just images. I think they want to check if item A, item B is healthy for this space or not.
That's fine. No, but those are not the same people doing both things. Right? Like you said, it wouldn't even be a week. It would be 20 minutes to change the art to the updated art across the board, depending on how they've done it. Maybe a little longer, depending on how they've implemented. So the implementing the art is not the problem. It's the creation of the art. And the programmers working on whether or not items are balanced are not the people that are going to be drawing the item art. Right? Why your resources focused elsewhere? Where? Right? We have not seen. That's not the same people. How are your artists influencing gameplay?
It shouldn't be.
Exactly. You've already implemented your new UI, so you don't have people working on your UI theoretically. Where are the artists working? Where are the resources going? We're not seeing custom splash arts. We're not seeing custom icons on the top of the HUD here. We're not seeing custom art come out of them in any way, shape, or form.
We haven't seen any skins. We haven't seen any custom skins.
Where are the artists? This is not, your gameplay people are not working, using their resources for anything that would influence art being generated by an artist.
I don't know, man. That does seem like a weird thing, but again, item art isn't that freaking important to me. It takes away from the overall game. When everything else is so beautiful and crazy cool, and then you got this real basic item art, it's like, what? Mm-hmm. Like, what is that? It just doesn't fit into the rest of the game.
it's a blemish on the predecessor record, and it doesn't need to be if they just hire an artist to do so.
Oh, well,
I would say yeah, those item icons, they, in my opinion at least, they can always come later. It's not gonna, they're just placeholder.
Yeah.
Who knows? We might even see an update on their first. Okay, maybe not their first patch, but maybe sometime within early access, which by the way is what, spanning for about 6 to 12 months. That was another answer from their Q&A, right?
The item art has not been updated in 6 to 12 months. I will lose my mind. It's been 2 years at this point already. But yeah, 6 to 12 months for early access. I mean, that's a good time frame if they can keep it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that's a really, really fast early access period. And theoretically means they're going to be iterating a lot throughout those 6 to 12 months. For how many systems are not present in the game that they told us about, to add all of those in 6 to 12 months, I think would be really great if they can meet their goal.
Hopefully they can, because I do like that time period for early access. Because too many times we saw it with Fault, where it just stayed early access for 2 years.
Yep.
And just never left early access. It would be nice if they could get their full game out in 12 months. I would absolutely love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then will early access have private custom games to play with friends or make a custom tournaments? Unfortunately, custom games will not be available on day one of early access, but we consider it a high priority feature and aim to have it implemented by the end of January. So we got an actual answer as far as the time frame on that, but it's not going to be there in early access. So if you guys are expecting tournaments and stuff like that, it's just not going to be possible without custom games. So
yeah, and they did mention this on the stream they did the other day, where they had Blood going in and answering questions on a community member's stream. And they did say that in one of their first patches, custom games would be a priority. So, or that was something I think he let slip. It wasn't like a direct answer to something. He was talking about patches in general, when we could expect the first patch, and mentioned like maybe we'll see custom games in the first patch. So it was kind of like, oh, so custom games are close, huh? Like, okay.
Scave, we don't talk about Fault. When will player progression be added to early access? We already have a lot of ideas and designs for player progression, but to make it meaningful, it heavily depends on other features like the store, which will give us more reward options. We have plans for some early player progression at the start of early access, and we'll expand on it over time. We will share more information on this soon. Blood Hunter, thanks for the gifted memberships, man. I appreciate that. Where you been? I sent you a message on Discord, Blood. I was worried about you. I haven't heard from you in like a month.
Whoa.
I'm very curious about, it says that we have plans for some early player progression at the start of early access, but we just heard from RGSA saying there is no progression. But is this something that changed between the two?
Yeah,
things?
I don't know.
They heard enough feedback and we're like, okay, we're sorry. Like, we'll put something in there, or what? Like, it's slightly contradictory within a week of itself.
Yeah, I'm a little confused by that. I mean, they said at the start of early access, but I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Thursday.
Yeah, we'll find out pretty soon.
Yeah.
Will Predecessor have skill-based matchmaking? A competitive environment is very important to us, so yes, early access will have skill-based matchmaking from day one. Your hidden rating will be updated based on the number of games played, skill level of opponents, and your win and loss streaks. We tested lots of versions of SBMM, that's the skill-based matchmaking, against the data collected during our last stress test and are happy with our current iteration. We will be closely monitoring the results during early access and will make quick adjustments to ensure it is moving in a good direction. Our current SBMM will also be used as a foundation for our future ranked mode, and we are using early access to test and prepare this as much as possible. We will share more information about our matchmaking system in a future dev blog. So you can expect
All right.
matchmaking to be in from the very beginning, which I don't know if it was there for some of the beta tests. It didn't seem like it was.
I think that's what they're saying in this post is we've tested versions against data collected during our last stress test. So it's not, it was in the last stress test and we were happy with it. It was, we tested it against the data from our last stress test and we're happy with it. So that to me tells me there was no skill-based matchmaking in any previous test, that this will be the first official iteration we're seeing of it.
Yeah.
The thing, it's not in this question, but it's in a different question that makes me nervous because we saw it with Fault, is they mentioned having an API open API for people to use for websites, builds, all those kind of things in the future. One of the things they mentioned would be part of that open API is your hidden rating. And we saw with Fault that turned the community toxic instantaneously. That the second you gave the people an ability for ranked mode outside of ranked, then it changed how the players interact with each other in a way that was irreversible for the game. And so if I would say anything to the Pred developers, I would not make rating public outside of an official ranked mode. If you're just going to make rating public, you may as well release ranked mode or some equivalency of it, because you're just going to create the same problem, but with no answer for the people that want something casual.
Yeah, whenever you release the ELO to everyone via API like this, you turn every game into a ranked game for a lot of people, but not everyone, which tends to piss people off because they want to play the goofy ass builds. But when you're trying to rank up and you want to be the top ELO so you could be Twitch streamer extraordinaire, you get pissed off when you see a mid lane Muriel building ability damage and shit. You know what I mean? But the mid lane Muriel that's building ability damage, you're matched with that person for a reason. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, true.
I don't know. It's a touchy subject. It's a weird one, and it seems from their answer here that we're not going to get rank mode until it is out of early access. They said they're going to use the entirety of early access to test their matchmaking for ranked.
I'm glad there's no ranked mode right away.
Yeah.
Yep. Especially if early access is paid. I don't know, a paid early access and a ranked mode just doesn't seem very player retention friendly, if that makes any sense.
I think having the ability to see your rank, whatever that's determined to be, even if it's just a number, right? Higher number equals better player, that without an official means to do so, or a way to separate the player base, is almost always going to be detrimental, because you're, like Mangu said, you're going to intermix the casual players with the hardcore sweaty players, and there's nothing you can do about it other than just not have that API be open for everybody prior to a ranked mode's release. I think that's the solution, is don't have that part of the API open to people until after the fact.
Well, it's something Rayleigh has brought up in chat, though, is that there's a lot of people that just won't play if there's nothing to grind for. They don't have a progression system, so the only thing you have to grind for is to increase your elo. So
you lose players both ways, right? It's a double-edged sword in that case. You either lose your casual player base, which is arguably the more important player base in a lot of ways, or you lose your sweaty player base and they go to something else. But that sweaty player base is also just as likely in a lot of ways to come back when that mode is introduced, if that's the reason they stop playing. Mm-hmm. Whereas the casual player base, if they get told that they're a terrible player and they should go kill themselves, that person will never come back to your game.
I said that we don't talk about Fault, but that's what happened to Fault. Like, a lot of people seem to think that having a paywall for the game will keep the toxicity out of the game. It did not with Fault. We saw with Fault it almost increased the amount of toxic people, because people wanted to be far more competitive with Fault. And it seems to me, just from what I've seen from looking around, that a lot of Fault players have been very attracted to Pred, and I think both Pred and Overprime need to get hot on IP bans, because for Fault, we talk about why Fault failed a lot, and like, you can point out all the bugs, you can point out the progression and the progression of the game and all that, but the number one reason that people told me in my comments, and this is just, anecdotal, like, this doesn't mean that this is the number one reason, but the number one reason that people come to me and be like, people are so fucking toxic in Vault, I'm not playing this game. Or this person was like this constantly, I reported them constantly, and nothing ever happened to them, I'm not playing that game. It was mainly toxicity that drove people away from Vault. So Predecessor and Overprime are both going to need to stay on top of that to make sure that select 10% few that are extremely toxic don't drive away the other 90% of your player base, or you're going to end up with 200 people playing a day.
Yeah. And we've even seen bigger games outside of these that we always talk about. League of Legends, for this new upcoming ranked season, is implementing a way that you can't get API information in the middle of character select. Right? That you can't see your teammates. You can't see their history. You can't see that they go 0-10 on Yasuo in their last game. You can't see any of that stuff to keep toxicity down prior to the match start. Because nothing's worse than getting into hero select and having somebody already talk shit to you.
Oh, yeah.
And just
Yeah.
the whole game. Right?
That was in
And
Paragon.
yeah, exactly. And if League of Legends is implementing those kind of stops to keep toxicity down, to keep API integrations from creating additional toxicity, all of these games need to be looking at that as a sign that this is the way the industry is moving and that they need to be careful with open APIs like that.
Mm-hmm. I do like the open APIs to allow the fans to create their own item builders and stuff like that. But yeah, with the Elo, that's a rough one. Elo is such a rough one because, again, like Aurelius pointed out, it keeps people in the game. It keeps people engaged and grinding. But God, the negative aspects of it can be so fucking terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man.
And yeah, the other aspects of Open API, I mean, I'm a person that benefited from Open API. I built my own Ethereal item builder using their API for the items. But that is a massive benefit. Keep working on that part of it. Just the Elo part is the one that makes me nervous.
Then the last question we had, Amedkit, I think the last few questions Amedkit actually added in here. This one is, when is Wukong going to grace us all with his presence? They said, unfortunately, Wukong will not be among the first 5 heroes we release. He will come to Predecessor when the time is right. And then Ace sent out a tweet, bro, why is everyone asking me about Wukong? Why you love that hero so much?
Which I'm sure as an ADC main, Ace is like, no, Wukong is the last to get added into the game.
I wish Mangoose and JPie and I had that conversation with Wukong. I wish we got that far.
Yeah.
Wukong is one of those problematic heroes that no one can figure out, like, how do we make it so no one hates this hero, but then we also don't want to piss off the Wukong fan base as well? You know, there has to be some kind of balance. Like, how can Wukong be like a good implementation for Pred? How can his kit be balanced? How can it be fun? Make sure there's no abuse cases with blinks and the items that are present. And I don't know. Wukong was just such a problematic design hero. I like what they were trying to go for with like a stance switching. And well, actually, that's like the only theme I can think of. Just stance switching, and it's Wukong. What kind of a MOBA would it be if you don't have the Monkey King in?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think for all of these games, something they could do, I think that'd be relatively safe, is get rid of, 84,000 hairs.
Not even that. We've talked about this so many times. I don't think they need to get rid of it. They just need to make it do ability damage, and you're fine.
For sure. I think that by itself would fix the problem in and of itself. But I mean, if you really want to like dive into his stance switching ability, right, and make that more integral to his kit, make that his ultimate that he unlocks at level 1. And has a 20-second cooldown between stances, and then empower each stance just a little bit to make them all very unique in which playstyle you're running. And you could have a really cool character that doesn't have 84,000 hairs, which was just problematic to start with a little bit. Even with ability damage, it would have been a little cracked at the beginning. But then you have a really cool character, even without, by changing effectively one ability. Right? Like it could have been, there could be a lot of stuff they could do with Wukong to make him really exciting in all of these games.
Boba Fett, that's a question for Jelly Knees. When Wukong and Ethereal, Jelly?
Yeah, Jelly.
Hey, we'll next question.
Oh, hi, Kyoko Rain.
if I were to, I wish, like, if I were a dev, I would completely rework his entire kit. If people want that kind of stance switch, like if the Wukong fan base wants that stance switch, the ability to be offensive and then switch to evasion, you can still have some kind of element in there, but there are just some. That's another thing. What the fuck is a melee carry?
Yeah, Sarah.
They often get shoved into offlane anyway. Like Sareth, you see Sareth in the jungle or offlane. You never see Sareth in the dual lane soaking up gold with the support. You never see. Well, Yin. Did we start seeing Yin more in offlane or something? I don't know.
Yeah, she was played a lot in offlane.
Yeah, I just feel like melee carries is just a weird concept.
I feel like that's more of a balance thing though than it is the characters themselves. Right, that you can in their kits. I guess it's part of the character. In their kits,
a different
you give them
role.
more tools to fight against that ranged character, but it doesn't make them inherently overpowered against them either. You have to find ways to balance that out. I don't think Paragon ever did that, and I don't think like Sareth's implementation in Overprime doesn't do that either. But they also kind of relegated her to the offlane as well. So,
yeah. Are we done with these frequently asked questions, or do you guys want to have anything else you wanted to cover with that?
I think that's all.
Now we've discussed their skins. We've discussed how all their skins are just recolored epic assets, which kind of stinks. Jelly did a little video that I'm going to put up right now where he actually recreated one of the recolors in, I think it was 6 minutes or something like that, just to show you.
9 minutes.
Okay,
total.
my bad.
Minutes.
Yeah, God, Mangoose, gosh.
Yeah, pull that up.
So I was perusing all the different partner streams throughout this week, right? That Windu and Bearded did one on Monday. Mangoose did his with Stunt and with who was that? Was that Ace? Was that Medkit in this week's partner? Who was that?
What? No, that was Ego.
Ego. Okay.
Ego and Low.
Yeah, but going through these, right? And a lot of people, I've made comments in the past about how recolors take 5 minutes to make. And it was kind of one of those put my money where my mouth is and also show the community what I'm talking about when I do say comments like that. And it took me 10 minutes. So absolutely took me longer than I've been saying the 5 minutes. I'm also not practiced in doing this by any means. You guys can see on screen, they're effectively color wheels that you just go through and select the material and say, I want his horns to be purple. I want his chest to be dark blue. I want it's really, really intuitive and easy to create these recolors. So the video you're watching now is sped up to 2 times speed just so you can get the feeling a little bit faster. But it's the hardest part for me going through this was finding which thing I'm trying to change, right? In his chest material, right? It's looking for the spikes on his back. Where in this material that's got 50 million assets in it are the colors for his spikes on his back. And that was the majority of the time. The coloration was not by any stretch of the imagination the issue. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to just showcase that more of building these recolors is not the feat that it is set out to be. Especially when they're basic skins involved. It's not like Undertow, which has a bunch of VFX attached to it. Undertow Gideon, which has a bunch of VFX. You've got the anchor, you've got the water, all that kind of stuff. Summer Fun Twin Blast, same kind of thing.
The ship wheel.
There's a lot more effects. Yeah, the ship wheel, right? When you're doing these basic skins from Epic that are basically plug and play, there is really difficult for me to justify high price points for something that took me 10 minutes to make the coloration of and is 2 clicks to then implement then thereafter.
Yeah.
And that's just hard. And so, yeah, putting it out there for people to look at this and see. And if you guys want this video outside of FTM, let me know. I can send it to you. I think the pressure that the devs are putting out of these skins aren't easy to make is an exaggeration through and through for at least these initial 6 skins. Unless we see some crazy VFX come out of them. If the VFX are exactly the same, these are really, really simple skins to make.
We may see some crazy VFX come out from them. We don't know. Like one of the things Pred had in the last beta test was Faye, whenever she basic attacks a wall, the little flower blooms right there, which is amazing. I love that so much in Paragon, and they brought it back in Predecessor, but it's different. Like, that's their own VFX. That's like not VFX that they ripped from Paragon. So they have the ability to do stuff like that. So maybe we'll get these skins, and they are saying that these skins will be exclusive to the early access and the packages. So you're only getting these recolors of the skins if you buy into the packages, which I guess could be a bit of clout that you can flex later on down the road. I'll tell you guys from talking to Ameda's devs, they know that they're missing a lot, and they know that it's a problem, but they seem to believe that they could fix it fairly soon. I don't know what they're going to do about creating their own skins and stuff, but I will also say that they value. I know we criticize Pred a lot. Seems like we've been criticizing them far more often lately than praising them. But I mean, there's a lot to be praised there. But the Omeda devs appreciate constructive criticism, and they're not gonna. I don't really know how to say it. They want to improve, and they know that to improve, you can't just have people kissing your ass. You got to have people telling you that your shit don't stink, that your shit does stink sometimes. So,
and I think for the skins in particular, I'd want them to be more transparent about why they don't have their own skins and why they're choosing to sell recolors instead. And for them and the community to not make this out to be something it's not. Like I said, these skins, for basic skins like this that don't have custom VFX or custom animations attached to them, they're really, really easy to put in. The coloration is probably the longest process part of that. And that took me 10 minutes, as you guys are seeing in this video, right? I want the devs, when they think something is wrong or they think they can improve on something, don't tout it as perfect the first time. Be able to say, we want to improve on this. Be able to say, we want to do these things. Whenever we see these FAQs out of Pred, they skirt around answers constantly. We made the joke about the drinking game, Mangoose, at the beginning of this section, right? They skirt around answers all the time. And that is worse than just addressing it and saying, yes, we know that this is lacking on our side. We are working to improve it. If they had told me that for the item section, that like, yes, we know we're using epic asset items, but we are working to get new items into the game. That is a much better answer than saying our resources are focused elsewhere. Right? Even if this time frame is exactly the same, it's about how you put yourself forward to the community. And by saying we're focusing our resources elsewhere in something that was important enough to add to the FAQ, that to me is limiting, and that's putting down the community that is trying to give you valuable feedback. Whereas you can easily say that is important to us. We know we have placeholder assets right now, but we're working to add our own item assets into the store. That is a better answer than our resources are focused elsewhere.
Right.
Even if it takes the same amount of time. It takes 6 months to add into the game, because that's when you decided to move your resources over. But one answer buys you a lot more faith from the community than the other. And that I would love to see that more from the Predecessor team. Also, what you guys are seeing in the video now, because we've passed the timer, is I wanted to model Grux, pose him in the same pose as the screenshot you're seeing in the top left. It's not perfect. It was kind of a meme that I did it anyway. But that is what you're seeing. It's not the skin coloration anymore.
But Pred has put all their chips into gameplay, which isn't a bad move because they do have amazing gameplay. We know from their beta test that games lasted around 30 minutes. Like, that's how as long as they wanted to, and they lasted 30 minutes, and it didn't seem like they had any problems with that. There were a lot, and we'll get into the Overprime problems here in a while. Mm-hmm. There were a lot more problems with Overprime's core game loop than Predecessor's core game loop. So my problem with them putting all their chips into gameplay is that that's not the only important part of a game. It is the most important, but it's not the only important part of a game. There you go. That back to the Pred thing.
I think with that gameplay example, Mangoose, is that's almost like grading on a curve, right? The little details are much lower portion of your grade, right, in terms of the gameplay, but together they can make up a massive chunk at the same time, right? Whereas you could have the gameplay take up 60%, is worth 60% of the grade of the game, and everything else is the last 40%. But even if your gameplay is only at 40% and you have the other 40%, that's still 80%, which is higher than just a full gameplay 60%.
Yeah.
Right? Like your game can be more complete with worse gameplay and all the other systems than just perfect gameplay and none of the other systems.
Yes, Monochromatic. Jelly wants to pose for Grux. He wants Grux to draw him like one of his French whores or however that goes.
Absolutely. Whenever Grux wants me to pose for him, I'll pose for him.
All right. That about concludes Predecessor, unless you guys had anything else for Pred before we move into Ethereal.
Nothing, I don't think.
I just want to say I'm very excited. It's coming out very soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very, as much criticism as I've given the game, it's because I want them to succeed, because their game is fucking fantastic and incredibly fun. The gameplay loop is there. You don't have the problems with the goddamn death timers. You don't have neutral objectives being the only way to win a game. It's like they got a lot going for them. They're putting all their chips on the core gameplay because it's really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can't wait for everyone to go ahead and dive in, and like when they pay for early access, they play the game and they realize like, holy shit, this is actually fun. I'm going to keep playing this for a couple more weeks or whatever until the next hero comes out, and then I'm going to play it. I'm going to play it more and more. I can't wait for people to just try it.
Mm-hmm.
Try it. If you have fun, great. If you don't, you can always come back if you want when early access is free. But we're only a few days away, and I'm really excited. I can't wait.
Hell yeah, man.
I think so. I want to address something Crashy said about Predecessor real quick. It's about communication, and updating us with a roadmap would be huge, right? Not just we're getting a hero a month, right? Giving some kind of like the store. We're expecting the store in 3 months. We're expecting this in 4 months. We're expecting this in 5 months, right? Give your community things to look forward to other than just the ambiguous it's coming, right? And that's something we fell into with Fault. Fault early on had a roadmap and it provided a lot of great detail. Then when they stopped having the roadmap, there was just obscurity to look forward to, and it felt terrible.
Yeah.
Right? Provide a roadmap. That's huge for keeping your community engaged going forward.
Spiritual Soul has asked this a few times. What happened to Phoenix Rising? Phoenix Rising had a big split early on in their development period because half the company wanted to use Paragon assets, the other half wanted to use their own assets. They never recovered from that split. They tried to limp along for a while, but they finally I finally threw in the towel for them after their director just never got back in contact with me after like a year. So Phoenix Rising is no more. You were saying, Medkit?
I was gonna say, Pred had a content creator event recently, and there are content creators out there that could possibly drop something soon. I would just keep my eye out. Hint, hint. Wink, wink.
It's always fun when I see my Steam friends suddenly like popping up.
I winked.
I always see my Steam friends suddenly like playing Predecessor a week before a test comes out or something, and I'm like, it's coming. Like,
yeah. I wish I can comment on that roadmap thing, but I can't. My lips are sealed.
All right. Before Medkit and I violate some NDAs, let's move on to Ethereal. So Ethereal, you guys released a new skin. This one is for Dante, and it ties in with Dante's lore. So Jelly, what do you want to tell us about this Dante skin?
I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? Like, it's not just cool thematic skins, right? Like we've seen with Cyberpunk Malaya, we've seen with the other skins that I've talked about with you guys, Magician Noxus, right? You can do cool themes around characters that have nothing necessarily to do with their lore other than it fits the character a little bit well, and you can fill in the rest, right? King Dante 100% fits in with his lore and comes from his lore. He is the king of his land. So it's really a way for us to show that the lore is also influenced in skin generation as much as it is everything, just a cool theme later on as well. So yeah, we've got the long flowing cape, we've got the crown on him, right? Lots of those like regal bits and bobs throughout. And I love the look of this skin for sure.
Yeah, Dante is a very fun character. I imagine Dante's going to be the one that a lot of people pick up and play because he most resembles a standard, I guess, third-person MOBA hero because he's just an ADC. He plays a lot like a mixture between Twin Blast and Murdoch. So I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards Dante.
Yeah, 100%.
Twin Blast because the two guns, right? I don't know much about Dante, but does he play like Twin Blast?
A little
He
bit.
plays like a cross between Twin Blast and Murdoch.
He's got a roll. He's got a roll.
Grenades?
He does have grenades.
Yep.
Okay.
He's got the long dong of the law, so it's. I mean, it's a decent cross between the two characters for sure.
Okay.
But Amedkit, I don't think you really knew too much about Ethereal. I sent you that video earlier.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, Leah. What do you think about the game? That was very early footage, though.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah. It's very early, but I really like the concept of the map. At least the fact that it's 3 layers, right, vertically stacked on top.
Well,
and another.
It's a check mark.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
So it's one off to the side, one lower in the middle, and then one higher over on this side. So they're not
Okay.
directly stacked on each other, but they are vertical.
I still like it, right? It's different. And there's it's all verticality. The other thing I noticed was that it's 6v6. I don't know how I feel about that because it's still a MOBA, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
So one of the things in MOBA is that unfortunately it's the nature of a MOBA is that if one person is fucked, the other 9 are just also messed up. And let me explain. Like, let's say one person DCs or can't connect. That means 11 other people potentially have their experience ruined for that match, or
yeah. I mean, so it's a double-edged sword, right? Like, there's no perfect scenario. But the example I would give is if you're, and granted, this is a huge exaggeration. If you're in a 50v50 battle and one person disconnects, the weight of that one person is significantly dampened because there's still 49 other people. Yes, they're technically they're at odds because they're one man down, but having that extra person also creates the opportunity for you to still make things happen around the map because you still have more people in general.
True. 5 versus 4 in these regular parazombies. Okay.
And that's part of it as well is the map in Ethereal is larger to compensate that extra player. Right? So there is ways around you can play with DCs that you still have a decent opportunity to play for your team. It does suck, of course, if you're going to have a DC, but that's a inevitable thing in any MOBA, not just, I mean, if you're playing Overwatch, if you're playing Paragon, if you're playing League of Legends and somebody DCs, you're going to be upset no matter what. It's not necessarily an Ethereal consistency.
That's something that's funny. That's something I brought up like a long time ago. Was that's going to affect your queue times? Having to match 6v6 versus 5v5. That just adds 2 more people, which might add like another minute or 2 the queue times. I don't know. That's
a billion players, man, Goose.
Yeah. Let's hope you guys have a billion players.
That's the end goal for any of these games, right? You want millions and millions of people to play your game.
Exactly. Jelly, need explanation on how many people on which lane. So it is 6v6. Absolutely. We're still going to have a traditional duo lane.
2 junglers.
There you go. It is traditional duo lane, which we are
one jungler can't do all that.
We're currently putting the duo lane on the fire lane. We've got your 2 junglers, which are currently splitting the map down the center, and they take 1/2 of void lane, 1/2 a whole of fire lane, and then the other gets the whole of ice lane. But they do travel for objectives. There are 38 jungle camps on the map, so there is plenty of resources to go around for both junglers on both teams. And then, so you've got mid lane down in the center. This is your typical mid lane you've got your mages, your casters, kind of more in this lane. Then you've got your off lane, which is the ice lane, which will be a single character as well. But typically your tanks, bruisers, all that kind of stuff.
I'm going to address a comment in chat real quick. Yamil Ars says, we don't want some watered down version of Paragon. We want the strategy as much as the action. You got to be careful by saying we. You should be saying I want this, because your opinions aren't the opinions of every single other person. there's people that have their own preferences, and everybody remembers Paragon in a very different way. So there's no way that any of these companies are ever going to completely satisfy every person's memory of Paragon. It just isn't going to happen. So you can say, I mean, I think it's fair to say I prefer this or I prefer that, but saying you can't include people that don't want to be included in your comment. Just a quick nitpicky thing.
Same person. Actually, I want to address their previous statement of progression wasn't important when Paragon beta released. The game was just good and worth improving. Progression was absolutely a thing in Paragon beta because you had the card system you had to unlock by playing games to get currency to buy the packs to get the cards. Yeah, that's a progression system. It was terrible.
It was so grindy as fuck.
Yeah.
I hated it.
Oh god, yeah.
It was absolutely a progression system.
Yeah, the card system in Paragon, I loved it, but goddamn, when you didn't have some of the cards, oh, it hurt. It hurt so much.
You know, this one time, very early on in Paragon, I wanted to master, I think it was Gideon. And I had these boosts ready, right? Those reputation boosts, the XP boosts, all that. I go into a match and I can't play Gideon. It's like, fuck, I'm running out of time on my shit. Because I was thinking, like, okay, I have enough time to do 3 matches with Gideon. That's about, I don't know, 1 level. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah.
And yeah, something else Chad just brought up, the mastery skins were in the beta of Paragon.
Paragon never went into full release, did they? It stayed beta the entire time.
Open beta was the last state they ever hit. And I started playing with closed beta, and it was in the closed beta they had account progression, mastery progression, and they had the card system.
Yeah, that mastery skin it just looked like one little like layer, and then they just copied and pasted to all the other heroes, right?
Oh yeah, they just added a different
some of them looked nice. Others like Aurora,
was terrible.
Thought it didn't really make sense because it looked like she has some fucking volcanic ash on her butt cheeks. I don't know.
Yeah, that was one material that they literally just dragged.
It was like one material.
It was just character. Yep. And this character now has a mastery skin, and that character now has a mastery skin.
But it was very. I like that because it was very recognizable what was a mastery skin and what wasn't.
Sure. I think it was one of those things of that they added the crowns later on. I think that was the way of like true mastery was showing the crown you had comparatively to just having the mastery skin. Mm-hmm. But that also is a great thing that you brought up. I'm not by any means saying that the predecessor devs or overprime devs for these recolors are being the first ones to do this. Paragon devs also were saying recolors were like the hardest thing to add into the game, or their mastery skins. And again, it was a drag and drop of a material on them. The dramatics were definitely high, even in Paragon days.
So with this Dante skin, you're basically saying that you're not going to have crowns in Ethereal because how are you going to put a crown on that crown? Huh?
A crown on a crown, a hat on a hat, man. What are you talking about here? I think this is a perfect also segue though to Ethereal. Ethereal will not have skin recolors, period. Full stop. Tier 1s are a complete model rework. There is no recolors.
And we've already seen several examples of guys' skins actually in the game. Like Cyber Malaya was in like the very first freaking alpha test, which was pretty cool.
It's been around for a while.
Cyberpunk Malaya. All right. I think that's it for Ethereal, unless you guys got anything else.
Oh, one more thing. I really liked how Leah can passively fly with like the stamina bar. That's pretty cool.
That'll be all Sky Slayers. So
she kind of needs it. It's a big ass map.
Yeah. It doesn't save her whenever you grab her and throw her off the fucking edge of the map though, because she can't fly in combat.
Personally, I do like large maps as long as the rotation times are fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's something we watch very carefully is to make sure rotation times are feeling good. It doesn't take you 4 minutes to go from ice lane to fire lane. You're like, well, eventually I'll get there and gank fire lane. Like, no, it's not.
There does have to be some kind of commitment, but not too drastic, right?
Yep, absolutely.
There's more of a commitment coming from Void into any of the other lanes, I find, than because ice lane and fire lane to get to Void, you just jump.
Is ice lane and fire lane like your red and blue lane type of deal?
For the jungle, yeah, they'd be the red side is fire, blue side is ice.
There's like a fire buff and a ice buff, and that's the lane next to them.
There's a whole bunch of stuff, man.
Yeah.
I only saw one video.
No, you're good.
Yeah, definitely not for the best player either.
Yeah, I know, Mangoose.
yeah. All right. So let's move on into Overprime. Got a lot to talk about with Overprime. First thing, Ranger actually discussed a little bit of console news in the Discord. They had a highlight video of their own, but this was just all different content creators that they were highlighting. G-Star, haven't seen much from G-Star, but what I've seen has been on TikTok, and it looked amazing. And then we're going to be talking about the GTG tournament that we cast, and then just our overall thoughts on what needs to be improved about Overprime, because there's a lot that needs to be improved about Overprime. It was a fun game, but goddamn, there was a lot of bugs and a lot of different issues that it had. So first thing I want to talk about, Ranger in the Discord was talking about that he was just having dinner with Epic Games talking about console, and that he has also spoken to both Microsoft and Sony. So Overprime possibly coming to both Xbox and PS5, whatever the next gen Xbox is. Go ahead.
So Overprime has a ton of actives, right? Like a lot. You can have one active per each of your 6 slots there.
Mm-hmm. You could. I don't know why you would.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why you would. And more often than not, you would probably forget to use them, at least effectively, right? But my point is, that's too many buttons to port.
Yeah,
they're going to try to
it is.
Port that into console. To me, it seems like they didn't think that far. Like, I'm sorry, but here, let me bring up Predecessor just real quick. Remember how they had 3 actives on the bottom of their HUD?
Mm-hmm.
And that's 3 buttons. Over on a console, like a PlayStation 4 controller, that's your square, your triangle, and your circle. X is probably jump, right? What I'm trying to say is Overprime has some actives and port issue going on. They have to, I don't know.
They're going to have to figure out a way to incorporate item selection to activate them, and it's probably not going to feel great. I don't think it would ever feel great on a controller.
Yeah.
It would be like Paragon's call-out system. I always thought that sucked. To have to go through all those steps to call something out. But a lot of that came from they needed to have something that worked on a controller, so that's what they came up with. They'll probably come up with something similar for active items, like you hit a button and then select which item you want to activate, and then activate it, which will be I would never be able to do it, but I don't know, maybe experienced console users can. I don't know.
You're probably right. They probably have a button. If you're holding L1, right? When you hold L1, that opens up your item wheel on your main buttons now. And so then you know which one is which, X, triangle, circle.
Yeah, then you play a game of Tekken real quick.
It's not an ideal situation by any means, but I could see that being the route they go.
Yeah, that brought up in chat that there's MMOs that are on consoles. I kind of wonder how they do it, because MMOs have tons of different active abilities that you have to use. So
from what I've seen, basically similar to what I just said, is they do a lot of submenuing of hold this button, then press this to activate this ability. Yeah, and like even someone in chat mentioned you do R1 or R2 plus something, and then it activates something. So it's just an expansion of submenus like that.
I think L1 and R1 together was the ultimate for Paragon on controller.
I mean, it's possible, but I think that's a problem that Ethereal is also going to run into, because they have more active abilities than any other of these MOBAs, as well as more
I've played many games of Ethereal on controller. It does take a bit to learn, but that's partly also because I'm not a controller player. But it is manageable, and if Ethereal can do it, I think any of these other games can do it.
Yep. Hey, is that VikingJedi in the chat? Did you get your Merkin, buddy? Did you get it? Did it fit you well?
He got it, I'm sure.
Send a picture in the DMs.
But I mean that that is just talk though. Like it's just that wasn't an official announcement. That was just Discord talk. I would like to see something official come out about it to appease the console beast. This highlight video they showed off, it was just highlights of different streamers playing in the game. I just think it's cool because they actually included the streamers, included links and all that. So it was a good way for them to promote their own content creation partners. I'm sure they probably did a Korean version of it too.
Yeah, it was cool to see our boy Windu the Mace on there as well.
Yeah, I don't know why he was in there, but
I would have been more questionable if Mangoose was in there with one of his plays.
Wow.
I would have been like, oh, okay, so I know none of these players.
Oh, so they're just letting anybody in this thing. I like fucking with Windu. But yeah, it was a pretty cool video. Not a lot to talk about with it, but then their TikToks on G-Star, it was just showing a lot of the event and showing the booth and everything. They had one really cool one where they had this wraparound screen on the edge of their booth that was really high, and it made it look like the Paragon heroes were inside of a booth looking down on the crowd and were like pointing at them and waving to them and stuff. It was like, what the fuck? Like, that's amazing.
That is pretty cool.
Incredible for sure. And it shows the marketing potential that they have for events like that as well. Granted, they've got Netmarble as their this was the first thing I thought of, but I'm just going to say it as their business daddy. So they're able to use that to open a lot of doors for themselves with the marketing for Overprime for sure.
Yeah. And then the GTG tournament that Jelly and I cast, both EU and NA, I think this tournament, just like the last one, did a lot to show off some of the shortcomings of Overprime. One of those shortcomings being that neutral objectives are an absolute. I mean, neutral objectives should be important. Not nearly as important, I think, as they are in Overprime.
Hey, welcome back.
What do you like? We didn't know. You said I like, and then that was the last thing we heard from you.
Tell us what you like.
I like cashews. I don't know. I like highly burnt marshmallows that are then peeled away and then burnt again.
And then burnt again.
You're the worst person. You're the worst person.
Okay, so
downstairs too.
In the middle of golden and burnt.
Okay, so streaming is the stream's back up and going. Oh, that sucked. I don't know what the hell happened there, but
So what did you like, Mangoose? Like
I originally liked how when you took Orb Prime, it would damage like turtles. It would damage everything, including the inhibitors and the core. Like I liked that at first, and a lot of people complained to me about it. And the more they kind of explained what they were complaining about, the more it kind of drew me to their side. Lesson learned: you can change your opinion, you know. But so I changed my opinion on it. Basically, I don't like that when you take Orb Prime, it can just finish a game outright.
I completely agree with you. I think taking the inhibitors, I think is okay. I think that's something that your team then has to deal with, right? That you have to fight, you have to hold your lanes, keep yourself in the game. That's perfectly fine. When an inhibitor's down and the core's under a certain percentage and the game just ends because they took an objective that you couldn't contest because you were defending your base, that's a bad feeling. That feels like you lost and it was out of your control. And that I think is a terrible way to end games. And I think that core damage from the Orb Prime should be removed.
And we saw the almost winning team for NA just stacking smites so that they could smite away these objectives, because the Prime Spirit Guardian was a very important objective to have. The mini primes, even before Prime spawned, that was a guaranteed tower kill. Mm-hmm. So they still have a lot of adjusting to do, and a lot of that has to do too with the death timers in Overprime. Way too freaking short.
Too short.
Way too short. Way too short. Yeah. You can kill their entire team, rotate to an objective, start it up, and their entire team will be there before you're halfway through with the objective. Even after they nerfed the health of the Prime Guardian, that would constantly happen. And it also served to extend games longer than I think that they wished for them to go, because there was no way to mount a solid offense to take down an inhibitor and then push core, because everybody would just respawn just almost immediately. I know they want real fast gameplay and everything, but if they seem to be focused more on fast gameplay than fast games, and I think it needs to be both.
And
Yeah.
I think death
Games
timers
drag
alone-
on.
They do. They do.
Overprime has a shit game loop.
I wouldn't go that far, but
The games just drag on and on and on.
They can. They certainly can.
they certainly can. Absolutely. I think the two big things that they can do to circumvent those issues you brought up, Mangoose, death timers being increased will drastically increase or decrease game overall time by itself. It also lets you take objectives easier, which again will lower game time. So there is a balance to be found there. As for the stacking smite items, there's two options, and I think you could do both realistically well. Is that you remove starter items from being purchased, and this would fix another issue they had with trading starter items to reset your blink or your dash, depending on which starter item you bought.
Oh yeah.
This would fix that issue theoretically as well. Is that post 5 minutes, starter items can't be bought anymore. That just across the board. In addition to that, because then yes, you're not gonna be able to buy starter items. You're gonna see an offlaner just start with the smite instead, just to circumvent that. You make it that if you're carrying the smite, you get less XP and less gold from lane minions. Because then it de-incentivizes taxing from junglers, which I think is valuable, right? Go in, do your job, go back to your jungle, because the jungle is really valuable in Overprime. It's hard to take, but it is really valuable. But it also dissuades laners from just taking the smite item, because then they're going to be behind their lane opponent accordingly. If you did both of those things, you will significantly limit, if not outright, just get rid of stacking smites for objectives.
Yep.
And
I agree.
Most big games that have a smite item do exactly that, where they limit the amount of XP and gold you can get from lane minions throughout the game because you are holding that smite item.
I think something else too that the tournament showed us that you just didn't notice in just free game in quick battle or even competitive is that ADCs were actually a little bit underpowered in the end, and it was tanks that were just overpowered as fuck.
I think they're both overpowered. I think tanks proved just more powerful in that regard. Because we saw so many carries off lane just dominate the off lane because that's what they could do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I completely agree. I think tank itemization being the key problem. I don't think the characters themselves are the problem. I think it's tank itemization. Build anybody tanky, win. Like it was just that simple.
There are some really strong tank items in Overprime. There's that 20% deflection one. There's the one that regens you really fast.
Nano machines that was just brought up in chat.
The Mad Spore Sash. Zinnia's toy, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Zig's Claw Barrier,
Zima's toy, and Nano Machines were the three strongest tank items in that game. And if you got those three, you were basically unkillable. It would take a serious play to get you to go down. And by then, theoretically, your team, if you're disrupting enough as a tank, your team has already cleaned up the fight. It doesn't matter.
But I mean, the power of ADCs was a problem, though, because you can't balance your game based off competitive play, or you're just going to alienate the rest of your community, which is the vast majority of the vast majority of the community were realizing that you could put an ADC in every single lane and be successful.
Yeah. And every lane, and that included the jungle. I saw so many jungle Murdochs go through, so many jungle Revenants go through, and jungle Revenant should not work. Jungle Murdoch, I'm willing to entertain. He's got some things that could keep him alive. Revenant doesn't have any of those. Why is jungle Revenant working? Right? Like there's no reason that you should be able to play jungle Revenant and just dominate games still by going in and by ganking lanes and still getting kills somehow.
But overall, the game was fun as fuck. Like I really enjoyed playing Overprime. But I think Jelly and I both said pretty much immediately, did not expect as many bugs. I don't think there was as many bugs in the last beta test that they had. No. This final beta test, there were bugs everywhere. Aurora was damn near unplayable because she was so buggy. They had a game-breaking bug on Xena, the new hero that they released, which fucking cool. They released a new hero, but they released her, and then there was that game-breaking bug, and then just I would get stuck in animations over and over again. There was a lot of bugs in this final beta test that I did not expect were there, and I hope to God are gone by the time they enter their early access, which is December 8th. So not long after Pred comes out, you got OP coming out right on their heels.
Yeah. Yeah, and not even just the one Xena game-breaking Xena bug, but she was glitching all over the place. Melee characters I had more of an issue with than ranged. That I would melee strike something and then teleport a foot and a half to the left and then do the same thing. And every time I was in the jungle, I felt that all the time. And that could be server problems, that their server's not optimized to be taking this much information. But whatever it was, it needs to get fixed. It was honestly the worst part of the experience for me was having those constant issues. I said this, I think it was last week, right? That the worst thing is dying and having it feel like it was out of your control. If you died and it was your fault, you didn't play better, they were fed, whatever, fine. But when I die because a bug moved me an inch and a half to the left and then I got stunned and then all these things because I wasn't in the position I thought I was, that's worse than everything.
The one thing that made me nauseous when I was playing Overprime was the melee basic attacks. I like the ranged basic attacks and the impact and sound and how they feel, but when it comes to like the melee ones, I fucking hate them. It's so clunky. And that being said, that didn't really stop me from spamming Kwong. So,
hey, Kwong was probably the worst defender of the bunch too.
He has a bunch of like just lots of polishing to be needed, but I just really like the idea.
100%.
He's drastically different. He, especially if I slap that skin on, it felt like I was playing a new hero. Like,
yes,
this guy kind of looks like Kwong, giving Kwong vibes, but it's like he's fucking. It's like this guy is a I don't know, like Kwong's son or something. Like he has his dad's abilities mixed in with his own. He has his dash. His autos have this cycle thing, which one of them is a knock-up, and his dash, you can skip one cycle. Supposedly has iframes, right? It's supposed to, but I don't fucking know. I can't trust the game to have iframes for his dash. And then the other thing is, when he tethers somebody, he can teleport to the sword. And when he ults, his right mouse button is a stun. Kwong in OP reminded me a lot of Lucario from Pokemon Unite. And that's only because if you are a master at that character, you're a monster. And that will differentiate between like the good Kwong players versus the not bad, but average. Like they're not fully utilizing his kit to its full potential. Because let me tell you, both using Kwong and getting slapped around by a Kwong, when there's a Kwong that's doing his shit, going in, knocking up. Oh, by the way, did I forget to mention his dash goes on? His dash cooldown gets reset when there's a takedown, not even a kill, a takedown. I think that's so fucking sick. Like he has such a high skill cap, and I love characters that have a super high skill cap. It makes me want to try and like be the best this character. I want to be the best for this character.
Yeah, I played a couple of games of Kwong toward the end of the final beta test. So much fun. Yeah, he's got stuff that needs to be worked out, but if they work it out, that he's going to be, it's so much fun to play. And like, the thing that I love is reading his kit. It seems like really daunting and complicated, but when you get that feel, you see where the potential is, and you're like, okay, I didn't pull that off correctly. I didn't dash at the right time, or I didn't right click at the right time to get my resets on my basic attack chain. But if I do, like, that's just going to go through the roof. It's so cool. Such a cool character. Even with all the changes, big fan. Just smooth them out a little bit. He'll be really fun to play.
Yeah.
I want to ask a good question. Cool. He said, here's a good question. Do y'all think a lot of these will be fixed before the 8th? A lot of these bugs?
I hope so.
My personal opinion is I think the final beta test build of the game, this is just my personal tinfoil hat theory. I think the final build of the test of the game was just some rush nonsense that they got out there to have in time for G-Star. And I think that they have a completely different build of the game that we're going to have for EA. So if we have all these bugs in EA, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a fucking problem.
I had a similar thought, Mangoose, to you in that but not that it was for G-Star, but now that you say that, that makes a lot of sense for me, is that we did not get a full patch in this test comparatively to the last test. Right? So the last test, we got a full patch. Narbash dropped, and then a whole bunch of patch changes of characters, balance, the whole 9 yards. And it did shift the game a little bit. We did not get that same thing. Xena dropped, and it was just kind of like, yep, Xena's here, and we adjusted Prime Guardian. Okay, moving on. Right? To me, that says that they may have already, this is a weeks old build. They may have been patches ahead of this already, and that patches ahead version is what we're getting on the 8th. So they'll have bugs ironed out. They'll have balance changed. They'll have items changed. They'll have all these things already done that were done for this test. But it's better to leave a bad taste. It's better to show that you can improve on things really quickly than necessarily have a small, we changed 2 things between the final beta test and early access release.
Yeah.
Right. So I'd almost rather, I hope, like you said, this is all fixed going into it. But we'll have to see where they're at with that when it comes time.
They are fast. Like, we've seen that they implement stuff really quickly compared to pretty much every other Paragon remake that we've seen. A lot of that has to do with they have the support of Netmarble behind them. So I don't know if they release it in the state that it was for the final beta test for their actual early access. I think that's going to dissuade a lot of players from playing their game. It'll be, we've said with Pred's fault problem is going to be the toxicity. Overprime's fault problem is going to be a whole bunch of bugs in early access, unless they get it fixed before the 8th.
Yeah, 100%. I also, actually, go ahead, Amedkit. I'll let you go first.
It was about something before, right? I was gonna say something. I can't remember now, but
were you going to sing the Pokemon theme song? Is that what you're going to do?
No. Maybe.
I don't know.
I think inhibitors need to be not paper thin. Right?
Yeah.
You shouldn't have non-tanks standing under a full inhibitor and just taking it with reckless abandon because they're not worried about dying to it. Right? They need to have more armor when there's no minions, for one thing. They need to deal more damage or have a higher ramping damage, maybe. That the more shots you take concurrently, the more damage you're going to take.
Yeah.
But they need to do something because those inhibitors meant very, very little by the time you hit 20 minutes into the game.
Yeah, the towers didn't seem to do much at all, or the inhibitors, I should say. I've seen a lot of people say that they want the 2 towers back, 2 towers before the inhib. I think if they just make the inhib stronger, it would be about the same.
Yeah, for the last closed beta test, I kind of understood a lot of the things that they did, right? Like they had 3 abilities level 1, they foregone the second tower, travel mode, and it was all to sort of, all these ideas would compound into help get that ideal match timer, the match time. Because the map, like that was one of the biggest reasons for Legacy, right? Is just the match times would be like 90 minutes plus, just because, and there was like travel mode, and there was all these issues, and I kind of understood like why they went certain ways, like the abilities, and even the portals. I was like, okay, it's an interesting idea, but funny enough, like for this closed beta test, they put like a cooldown for the portals, but they still have that smite issue, like that. I think Jelly, you mentioned like teams would start to stack the smite item. That was there for like the last test, right? Where people would have Kwong or Muriel, and they would just smite or prime as soon as it comes up, grab it. Kwong teleports to the fountain and just push for a game. There's just a lot of like just gameplay related, like gameplay loop stuff that is kind of hindering the game, in my opinion.
I think a lot of that gets fixed with death timer increases. Right? Like, yes, fast rotations are a thing, absolutely. But if they either get punished or get a kill for those rotations, then there's more value out of it, because the person that died or the person that rotated and died is punished for doing so, right? Like you have to pay attention. It creates more opportunity to pay attention with wards, creates more opportunity for your team to play as a team. But then if something goes wrong for either team and somebody dies, there's still potential to do something afterwards, right? That was the thing we saw in the tournament all the time. They'd get 4 kills on the enemy team, have free push onto a tower, and decide to back instead because it's more risky to push the tower and have the whole enemy team respawn and come to you than it is to take that tower. Death timers being increased by 10 seconds across the board almost could make a huge difference for the feel of the game overall.
The other thing too, though, is economy. Unless I was playing ADC or something, very, very rarely did I make it to full build, no matter how long the game went.
See, and I felt almost the opposite problem.
Really?
Yep. Other than I didn't play very much support, but the games I did play support, it was slower.
Oddly enough, one of the few times I made full build was as a support. But
oh yeah, see, I almost never hit full build as support comparatively.
At some point, you stop farming minions and start farming heroes.
yeah. I mean, I think that they want their game to be like that. Like that's by design. They want there to be a lot of team fighting in the game. But with that team fighting, you kind of miss out on a lot of minion farm. And I don't know, as a mid laner, I was happy if I got 3 full items by the end of the game. And that seemed to be the same for a lot of people. You would end the game, you look at everybody's items. You would have the carry with like 6 items, and everybody else with like 3. And the jungler maybe with 6 items. And everybody else would have like 3 items. So that's something they need to adjust. What's that?
Was there a bounty system in Overprime?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
there's that at least.
I think their item shop as a whole needs some looking at in terms of gold prices, stat value, and passive value, right? Because like we said, with the tank items, they're insane. The 80 assassins were non-existent effectively. AP assassins worked, but it was Countess, and in the current meta, Countess was basically terrible unless she was in very specific matchups.
Yeah.
Crit was
like
insane.
Gadget.
Yeah, Gadget was insane, but crit in general was insane. You build crit on any character, congratulations, you're very strong. Like, that's all that mattered. I think their itemization as a whole desperately needs to be looked at, and it could be that I was definitely playing jungle, and I would say that the majority of my games I was positive in KDA, so that probably helped in terms of my gold generation to get me to 5 to 6 items on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about something I saw in chat for a second. Death timers are fine. Travel mode creates the problem. If they increase death timers, you'll be sitting in base for so long, you'll get bored. I think it's one of those things you have to pick your lane, where if you're going to have travel mode, you have to have longer death timers. If you're not going to have travel mode, you can have shorter death timers.
Yeah.
That is just one of those facts of life. You need to decide which one you're going with and stick to it.
Or you're going to have long drawn out ass games.
Yep. And by sitting in the fence like they are now, you turn into like people are back in lane almost instantly whenever they respawn because of travel mode, and they're not dead long enough to make anything happen in between.
I mean, comparatively speaking, like Overprime now doesn't have nearly as good of a game loop, in my opinion, as Predecessor did during their last beta test that was months and months ago. That's something we've talked about that. Predecessor has focused on gameplay and gameplay loop. That's what their focus has been on. Whereas Overprime, you have a full game. You have a complete game. It may be a little bit janky and a little messy, but I think it's in some cases it's even more fun for all that janky messiness of the game. Like the Overprime is a spectacle that is fun to watch and fun to play, but they definitely need to work on their gameplay loop just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think I'm going to go back to the analogy earlier of grades, right? That gameplay can be 60% of your grade, which is the majority to be sure, but that means the other 40% can't go ignored either.
Yeah.
And that if Paragon the Overprime is sitting at a 40% in gameplay and 40% with all the other features in line, that technically puts them at a higher percentage than Predecessor. Again, for the example, I'm not saying Overprime is better than Predecessor, right? But just for the example, right? Like it's not, gameplay is not the whole pie, right? There is definitely room to improve for Paragon the Overprime, but they have these other systems already done, so now they can focus on that at the same time.
Their skin game as always, is on point. They didn't even show off all the skins that they have available. Like, we've seen even more skins from them, but these skins this time, they all had transformative effects to the skins, which is awesome. Like Shinbi had the black and gold wolves for her skin, and then even Kwong had the green trails with his skin and the green lightning, and we saw a lot of cool stuff.
Custom VFX for their higher skins. Something somebody told me recently is that in Korea, VFX is like its own class, right? That when you're in school, right? That you can in high school, you're building like, yeah, you know what? I'm a VFX artist already. And you going in and they are pristine about their VFX. So the fact that, and we see like their VFX are insane on all those skins. They're additive, but they're not cluttering the screen with those additions, right? They're really nicely added to these skins. And I think they make the skin value much higher without being a detriment to the overall game for that skin value.
Right, Leo's pointed out the Chrono Shinobi skin for Gideon. The visual effects for that were fucking insanely good. Just too bad that Gideon kind of sucked for this beta test. Probably would have seen a lot more of him.
A lot of people are probably happy about that, right? Because
he was way overpowered. The last one,
zero hero in Fault. People probably got tired of seeing Gideon all the time, and not seeing more mid laners was like a breath of fresh air, I think. Even though, like, you had your triangle, right? You had Gadget, Countess, and FaZe
for Fault or for
Overprime.
Oh, Countess was not in the top 3 by any stretch.
Yeah, I don't think she was part of the triangle.
No,
FaZe for sure was.
I'm talking about who counters who. Countess should counter a Gadget.
Scissors situation.
Countess should.
Countess has a chance, right, with the shadow slip.
Yeah.
But again, that see, it all comes down to player skill and the rock paper scissors triangle thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, FaZe definitely countered Countess. FaZe countered Countess and Shinbi. I think Shinbi was actually a pretty good option against Gadget because you just get on top of her, and even if she slowed you while you were on top of her, you could just dash again and you'd be on top of her again. So I thought Shinbi was an excellent counter to Gadget. But
there's definitely a lot of rock paper scissors availability in Paragon the Overprime, but some of the overpowered characters just kind of outshined that and removed all sense of the rock paper scissors nature.
Yeah, they were a nuke.
Mm-hmm.
Paper can't touch it. Scissors can't. Rock can't. They just win.
Yeah, they brought gun to rock paper scissors and just
gun. There we go.
Yeah, Gadget was gun. Gadget was gun.
Gadget was a fucking gun.
Which is so surprising. She just that nobody ever would have predicted years ago back in Paragon that Gadget would be the most banned hero in some sort of Paragon successor, Yeah. Oh, fucking Gadget. But yeah, they got a lot of balancing ahead of them. They got a lot of bug fixing ahead of them. They've got a great game. They just overall, but they do have some fixes they need to make before December 8th.
Yep, for sure.
Yep.
And I think that's about going to wrap up the show, unless you guys had anything else, and unless chat has anything else they would like to discuss.
I think for me, the biggest thing, right, in this period where we're going to have both, we've never had 2 Paragon successors out at the same time. Mm-hmm. Right. And that is going to be, we're in uncharted waters, right? the interesting thing for me going forward is not where they're at on release necessarily, right? Like whether one's more fun, more balanced, whatever. It's how they iterate going forward, right? If one of them takes 2 months to patch and the other one's patching on a weekly basis, we can see a lot more out of the one patching on a weekly basis that shows that improvement over time rather than something, a large patch or even a small patch once a month, right? Like it's the iteration that I'm really excited to see from both of these games and how quickly they adapt to player feedback, to imbalance, to new characters, to all of those things, which is something that lacked in Paragon, right? Every time a new character dropped in Paragon, it was always like a almost like 3-week wait where you're like, great, now we're going to have to sit and cry for 3 weeks while we wait for this character to get balanced out. Mm-hmm. And then they would just release another character and then it didn't matter. Like it was, yep, congrats, Mortgage is still broken, but Wukong, here you go. Like terrible. So I'm really curious to see how these games iterate going forward.
Good. Med, you got anything else you wanted to address?
Well, for Predecessor at least, right? The game's coming out soon. In fact, on Thursday. For me, I don't know about a lot of people, but I took that whole week off, so I'll be streaming Predecessor. And I can't wait. And so there's one thing I could say about early access, and the more days that pass by, the more it makes sense to me why early access is paid. And one of the things I talked about was how, because there's like a wall, there's like this paywall, we're gonna see less trolls. And by that I mean, like, people won't just jump in, troll around, leave. If you have a paid early access, people will buy in, try it out, and there's the level of dedication, right? If someone is going to pay for this, there's some above average interest for this game, right?
It's the sunk cost fallacy, right? You've put something into it, now you need to get that amount out.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, that's all I have, really. Just can't wait to play Pred, and I don't know when Overprime will be back. I think they gave us a date, but I think I'm gonna spend most of my time playing Predecessor.
Yeah, I mean, if you took off a week, that's perfect, because Overprime comes out December 8th, so a week after.
Yeah.
Pred, so you get all your Pred time in.
There you go.
Yeah, I do. I kind of think the same thing. Like, having paid early access is going to decrease the amount of people that are just going to make new accounts whenever they get banned or whatever, or what have you. People are going to take the game a little more seriously because they actually paid into it. Just stop in my fucking comments telling me that Pred doesn't care about money because they don't have a shop yet. If they didn't care about money, they wouldn't be charging for early access. I do not understand that argument. Anyway, you were going to say something, Medkit?
Well, so this is just my opinion. So early access being paid, I don't think it's all about the money. I think they just want to refine the game in a more rapid pace by introducing like at least a couple thousand more players to refine the game even further.
You could introduce more players if it was free.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know if the game is ready for that many players yet. To just try it once and then they leave, and guess what? That's like your potential, like, big chunk of a player base that just left and won't come back. At least for early access, there's some kind of interest. They buy in, right? They play it. They like it, sure. They stay. If they don't, they can always come back when it's free. And paid early Predecessor full release is going to be free to play. So I just think, like, the game's not ready for that giant of a player base yet. We only have like 20 heroes. The map, not the map. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more paid early access makes sense to me.
I would 100% agree with you if Vault didn't happen.
Yep. I think Vault's the prime example of why that's not the case.
Yeah.
Vault, everyone that had the same idea of Vault when it came out, it very quickly learned that that's not how that works.
I know a lot of people are going to say,
if rapid iteration was what they're looking for, they could expand their testing. They can their internal testing. I don't know how many people are in that, but they could expand that to greater numbers, right? They don't necessarily need to be paid to rapidly iterate, and we haven't seen rapid iteration out of them thus far. I don't see why there's confidence in paid early access creating the urgency and the speed of iteration for Predecessor that we haven't seen from them in the last 8 months.
Right. And, to be clear, I don't think Vault failed because of paid EA. I think it failed.
No,
I don't think that arguing that paid EA will keep trash out of your game is a valid argument, because we saw with Fault that it will. And a lot of people might say, well, Pred has more people going for it than Fault, and Pred has different players. And no, it's the same motherfuckers, really.
Something I do want to put out there to the community and you guys, and spread the word from here to your friends. Do not review bomb these games when they come out, both Overprime and Predecessor.
Yeah.
Don't.
Give them a fair chance.
There is no reason for it. And whether you're an Overprime stan or a Pred stan, just let the game exist and let the reviews determine naturally what happens.
Yeah.
Like, please, for the love of God. And I know we're going to see it anyway. I know the second Overprime releases on Steam, the first review is going to be somebody saying Overprime is better, right? Like, it's just going to be that way. But please, guys, don't review bomb these games. Just let them naturally figure out their position in this world so they can actually learn from those mistakes and progress and become better for it, instead of just getting a bunch of false information and not knowing what to do with it.
Yeah, OP fans will 100% buy Pred just so they can review bomb it on Steam, and then Pred fans will 100% get an OP account so they can review bomb OP. Like, it's a sad truth, it's a sad reality, but it happens.
We saw exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Fault wasn't nearly as bad as everybody tells you that it was. In fact, there's still a lot of people that very much miss that game, because it also had a very good core gameplay.
The review bombs are a bit excessive.
Yeah,
it's just unneeded. There's no reason for it. Let the game survive. If your game is that good, let it speak for itself. Why do you have to go and trash other games to tell you that your game is better?
I think people like that white knight excessively, or they're overly toxic. There seems to be a small part of them. It's like somebody that likes an Instagram model's post, and they seem to think that there's a small possibility that she'll see that and fuck them. Like, they think that there's a small possibility out there that if they leave a negative comment on this or that, or they white knight hard for this or that, that some executive at one of the companies is going to notice that and fucking give them a goddamn cookie. Like, nobody's giving you a cookie, so shut the fuck up.
Yeah, if I subscribe to Mangoose's OnlyFans, then he will definitely sleep with me.
Nobody wants to see that. God damn. Way to gross everybody out towards the end.
You're welcome. Whatever I can do for you, man.
We need to wrap this show up so we can see pictures of Vikings Merkin. All right. Rich J says, let them bite. What's the secret behind your cookie? Oh, I've got a cookie story I'll tell you sometime.
Oh, God.
Oh, you've heard it before, I'm sure, Jelly.
I'm sure I have.
The cum cookies from the prison.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Heard about this story.
Yep. All right. So on that note, let's start wrapping things up. Medkit, what do you got to plug? We hear that you're going to be streaming the hell out of Predecessor when it comes out on December 1st. What else you got going, buddy?
My YouTube channel, Amedkit, and follow me on Twitter if you want. On Thursday, I'll be live streaming, and hopefully every day after that for about a week, because I have that week off.
There you go.
Right on. Jelly?
Same here, actually. I'm going to stream Predecessor on Thursday. Excited to get it started. I've been getting my stream all set up and good to go this weekend. And I'm excited for the future of these games and excited to see where they go for sure. What about you, Goose?
Expect some Pred content from me soon. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But yeah. 608 says the what cookies? I'll tell you all that story sometime. It's pretty funny. It's one of the grossest fucking stories ever. But anyway, that is going to wrap it up for this week. And as was pointed out in chat, I think it's also fair to say, don't confuse review bombing with bad reviews. If you have an honest bad review, a negative experience with the game, do not be afraid to give it a bad review. Just be constructive. Let them know what they could have done to fix that game for you. And yeah, don't shy away from giving a bad review if they think they deserve a bad review. Just don't just make sure you give them an honest shot before you review bomb them. You
When I
know,
see 0.1 hours played and then a bad review about how this game's unbalanced and terrible. Come on, guys. Like we could do better than that.
Escape, we've been doing these every week. I don't know where you've been. I saw you earlier say where FTM has been. We had to do it way earlier last week. We did it like 5 hours earlier, but yeah. We've been doing them every week. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this week. Thanks everybody in the chat that stuck around for this long. Let's get some man geese in the chat. No problem, UMLRs. And if you're watching this as a video, I appreciate that too. But for now, this is the For the Minions crew signing off. You guys have a good one.
Bang, bang, bang.
Peace.
There you go, your man geese.